Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. I am super excited today to introduce to you Colin Dewaay, the master in
Oh.
supercharging your metabolism. You are going to fall in love with this guy because he's going to show you how to be able to have a very, very, very fast metabolism, as fast as you want it to be, and how you can finally achieve that so you stop having to restrict and stop having to yo-yo diet all your life. Thank you so much, Colin, for accepting my invite. And can you share a little bit about your bio so people know just why I'm so excited to talk to you today?
Sure. Well, first, thanks for having me on. I'm really excited to do this. And yeah, I've been coaching for almost a decade now. It's been 9 and some odd months. And the big thing I noticed right away was most people are coming from a background of extreme restriction, yo-yo dieting, and just habits that really harm your metabolism. The extremely low calorie diets, extreme amounts of cardio, constantly on and off, and people always want to come and lose weight, but they're just in no position to do so, right? And that's where reverse diet comes in. Well, I'm sure we'll talk a lot about this, but essentially it gets your maintenance calories back higher again, so it puts you in a position to be able to succeed. And it's just been glaringly obvious how big of a problem this is and how so much of the world really needs to focus on more sustainable lifestyles, not rushing the process, and really making sure that your metabolism's in a good spot. So it's been my mission now for the last decade or so. And I've done I actually just searched this yesterday for my next YouTube video. I have done 132 videos that have the title reverse diet in it. So there's plenty of information out there now. But yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think this all started with Lane Norton and Paul Revelia. I think also is very well known. Who coached you, right? Paul Revelia is very
Yeah,
famous.
he's a close friend of mine. So he coached me when I did a show. My leg just went out. The I did a show in 2019, and I'm not really a bodybuilder or anything like that. I just wanted to do one show and just see, and he helped
Yeah.
me through that 5 years ago or whatever. But yeah, they're both friends of mine, and they're the ones that really popularized it.
Yes.
I don't know either one would take credit for actually discovering it or whatever. It's just they
Right.
kind of notice the same types of things, right?
Right.
And what are some methods we can do to help get you back into a better spot metabolically without gaining just an unnecessary amount of weight? And
Exactly. That's the key right here, without gaining an unnecessary amount of weight. And as we were talking earlier before we started, I was sharing with you how there's this concept within the carnivore community called priming, where you do like a couple of weeks initially of just overeating so that the goal is to heal your hormones and your satiety signals and overcome sugar addiction. And it's in a way they're trying to mimic reverse dieting, but the whole purpose of reverse dieting is not to gain additional unnecessary body fat. And so what I'm seeing
hmm,
in the whole priming protocol within the carnivore community is people are told just eat all you want as long as it's like carnivore foods and you don't have to track and you don't have to worry. And later on, you can fast to shed the excess body fat. And what's happening is everybody's blowing up. They're gaining weight so quickly, like crazy. And then,
yeah.
they go back on a fast. They might lose a little bit of weight with the fast, but that's not a long-term strategy because the fasting is also like the worst thing you can do if the goal is to speed up your metabolism to get real long-term results. So let's see, where should we start here? Let's start with like the basics of reverse dieting. What have you found to be the most effective way to boost metabolism and really, raise your baseline metabolism?
So yeah, there's multiple reasons for using the reverse diet strategy, and there's many ways to do it. So there's no one set answer. And there's a difference between, say, for instance, someone's coming from, like I said, an extreme history of yo-yo dieting, a lot of crash dieting, and just going through that process really puts their metabolism in a terrible spot. That is going to require a long period of staying out of a deficit, taking your time to get those maintenance calories higher. And that's going to be a slower process of increasing a little bit more gradually versus someone who maybe finishes a diet,
Yeah.
gets to the end. Now you've lost that weight, but your maintenance calories is going to be slower from that, just from the dieting alone, not only because you've lost weight, so
Yeah.
your maintenance calories are going to be lower from that, but also research has really shown that your metabolism tends to slow down more than just what weight loss would predict alone, just from the kind of preservation aspect of your body doesn't like to be on low calories.
Mm.
So at that point, you can increase your calories a little bit faster just to try to get your maintenance calories back to where it used to be.
Yeah.
So they're very different things. And it all just kind of depends on how the body is responding, how diligently you're following the plan. So a lot of times I say, okay, you're going to make maybe 50 to 100 calorie increases each week.
Yeah.
And that's your daily calories. So if you eat 1,500 calories every day, then maybe you eat 1,550 every day for a week.
Yeah.
Um, and you can kind of follow that approach. And what that allows you to do is basically you eat less, your metabolism slows down, you eat more, your metabolism speeds up, right? I
Yeah.
mean,
It
that's
adapts.
the gist of it.
Yeah.
Well, if you're what a lot of people don't understand is your maintenance calories is a moving target. So it's going to change to what you do, kind of like I was just explaining. So if your maintenance calories is now slowed down because of your dieting tactics and you're on very low calories, but you're adapted to that, you can't just go back to what your old maintenance calories used to be. Maybe it used to be 2,500, but now it's 1,500. If you go back to 2,500 calories at that point, you're in 1,000 calorie surplus and you're going to gain weight rapidly.
Right.
So by taking the more gradual approach, now your body has an easier time keeping up with the increases of calories because it's not so extreme and it kind of adapts along the way. So it helps minimize the fat gain. That's not to be confused with you won't gain any body fat. You should expect to gain some, but it helps keep it more under control to get things back where they need to be. And especially if you have a big history, you're not where you want to be, but you can't lose weight because you're on low calories and you're stuck because of previous dieting habits.
Yeah.
It's really the only way you're going to get yourself back into a position to be able to succeed again. And you don't
Yeah.
want to go too far backwards. So that's where taking the gradual approach kind of comes into play.
Exactly. And that's the key, right? You gradually increase the amount of calories that that person is adding to their daily caloric intake. And it's usually around 50 to 100 calories extra per day for the first week. And depending how well they're responding. I've reverse dieted some of my clients. And because again, most of my clients tend to be carnivores, they're eating a lot of protein.
Mm-hmm.
I have just as a phenomenal success story because she was an athlete, so she knew how hard to go with the weightlifting, and you start cutting when it hurts, not like just
Yeah.
oh I weightlifted, but did you really, did you
Right.
really?
Yeah.
And so she had that down packed, and then we just added in the reverse dieting plus all the protein because on carnivore diet it's like all protein, and I was
Right.
adding 200 calories. She was like she was breezing through that reverse
Just
dieting
eating it up.
process. I was in awe. I remember her like at the end, she was like, and it didn't take us much until I got the email. I'm losing weight. I don't want to lose more weight. Like, I don't want to be too skinny.
Yeah.
I'm great here. And that got me thinking, it's like, wow, because um I don't know of anybody else who's like reverse dieting within the carnivore community. Within that context, because maybe those additional things, like all the extra protein, is driving further, like as speeding up this thing. It's just something
Mhm.
to kind of like throw out there for other people to also try and pay attention to. But yeah, that's the thing, right? You don't just go and just eat as much as you want, as and think
Right.
that your metabolism is going to be fixed that way. You need to send the correct hormonal signal to the body, right? You need to tell it, you see those extra calories I'm giving you, I need to just shuttle that into muscle and speeding up my metabolism, not don't shuttle it into extra body fat, because you will gain body fat quick. And then the more body fat you gain, if you're doing it that way to fix your metabolism, the more body fat you gain, it's going to necessitate another round of dieting. What's going to happen when you diet again? More metabolic adaptation,
Right.
right? What do you
Yep.
think?
Yep.
What do you think of fasting?
So it depends on what you mean by it. So like there's a lot of definitions of fasting and like intermittent fasting, which has several different protocols, whether it's, an 8 hour window of eating versus 16 hours of fasting, or some people do like alternate day fasting, things like that. As a whole, for the most part, as long as your total intake for the day, or I should really say for the week, is the
Right,
same, it
right.
doesn't really make too much of a difference, right? So if you're eating, and there's been research on this, they did one study where it was like, I'm going off the top of my head, but they literally compared like 2 meals, 6 meals, 8 meals, 12 meals, and like shorter and longer eating windows, and equated calories and protein, and there was literally no difference whatsoever.
Mm,
So as long as your intake's the same, fine. So I don't mind if someone likes more of an intermittent fasting approach and it helps them keep their calories where they need to be and they like it and it's sustainable and they're hitting the numbers, great. But fasting in and of itself isn't magic. It doesn't to my knowledge, there's been no research that's shown in a calorie and protein equated diet, fasting was more effective for fat loss than anything else,
Mm,
right? So I don't mind it. It's not something I ever say anybody needs to do. Um, but if you like it, can sustain it, and it
yeah.
helps you hit your numbers, great, do it.
Right.
But
Right.
it's just much like everything else, it's just not magic. We're always looking for that magic protocol, right? We were talking off camera about how a lot of people go to carnivore because they think, okay, now I don't have to track because I'm
Right.
eating nothing but meat and it's magic. And it's like, no, it's not magic, right? Like
Right.
it's helpful, it's very filling, you get a ton of protein, which is extremely helpful. So there's certainly benefits to it,
Yes.
but it doesn't mean you can just eat however much you
Yes.
want, right?
Exactly, exactly. And that's where people, and I understand it, because I understand wanting something that's simple, that's going to solve
Of
all the
course.
problems, you know? I was just earlier trying to learn YouTube ads, and I go to
Hmm.
YouTube and I look, okay, how to run YouTube ads, and I get all these potential videos that I could click on. And which one did I click on? Learn YouTube ads under 5 minutes.
Right, of course. Of
So
course.
we do it too in other areas
Of
that we don't
course.
know much about. And it's like, let's go just straight and maybe it'll work, you know? And so I understand that.
Yeah.
And this is why usually like the fitness accounts that tend to be very simplified and have those kinds of teachings, they tend to blow up very easily. Whereas the people who like know how to do it the right way, and we're telling you, you got to do this, you got to track, you know,
Right.
it's like, oh my gosh, this I've been talking about reverse dieting, and some of the comments I get, this seems like too much work, you know?
It
So
is, but
yeah,
that's why people succeed, right? You got to be willing to put in the work. And it doesn't mean that there aren't other ways to do things, but no matter what you choose to do, it's going to require putting in the work and it's going to require making it a lifestyle and doing it forever, right? Like there's no such thing as just
exactly.
lose weight and then be done. If you do that, you're just going to keep doing it over and over again. So,
Right. Which, yeah, I've
but
done for over 2 decades, yo-yo dieted, because I
yeah,
never corrected the metabolic adaptations. Like lose the weight and then go back and binge and whatever, because I'm so metabolically adapted, right? I just, even if I eat normal the next day, I blow up and then I get depressed and then I eat well, then what's the point? Let me just take advantage of these few days before I
yeah,
feel guilty enough to go back on another dieting attempt.
so
And
common. Yeah.
right. So yeah, I love what you said about, fasting. There's nothing magical about it. What I find is, again, I'm talking from the context of like my audience, which tends to be more carnivore. Uh,
Mhm.
they're not gonna be able to hit enough protein intake because they're doing OMADs or they're doing like full day fast every other day. It's
Yeah.
just too much fasting within a week to allow you to, if you're going to speed up your metabolism, you're not going to be able to do that because you're not going to be able to
Yeah.
hit enough protein within that week.
Yeah, and it's tough too because carnivore, one of the big benefits of it is it's super filling, right? Like meat and
Right.
protein in general is very filling, which is great in a fat loss phase when calories are down and hunger is usually higher. But if you're trying to work your calories up and you're trying to do it through all super filling food in a very short window of time,
It's
not
not
only
going
is it
to,
going to be tough, but you're going to be
yes.
miserable too. You're going to be so full, it's going to be
Yes. And
a
then
real
if you're not
challenge.
getting enough protein, how are you going to perform really well at the gym and lift really heavy
Mm.
weights? Because you need to get new records with your lifting. Because the heavier the weights that you can lift, that should coincide with a faster metabolism. Because the more muscle you put on, that's one of the ways that your body also speeds up its metabolism. And so, like it's harder to get the protein in. It's harder to get effective workouts in if you're doing too many fasts like that.
Right. And
Yeah.
if you, again, so if you can do it, great. But if you
Right.
are trying to work your calories up and you can't get enough calories and protein in, uh, might be time to reevaluate, you know?
Exactly, exactly. Have you come across an upper limit for how much you can speed up the metabolism by doing a reverse dieting phase?
It's very individual. And some people, I mean, they just can eat and eat and eat, and their calories just continue to go up, and you're just like, this is unbelievable. Like, what's happening here? Like, you just keep, like you said, you had your client who kept, 200 over and over again. They just not only were maintaining, but kept losing. Uh,
Right.
but then you see some people, and it's like, man, you're making like 30, 40 calorie adjustments, and their body just wants to gain, and you got to take it super slow and maybe go every 2 or 3 weeks, and it's just much more of a struggle. So there's a lot of individuality there. And I really do find oftentimes when people can increase their calories really fast, it's great for the reverse. But then when they come back to try to cut down the road, you got to get much more aggressive and
Right.
it doesn't respond quite as well to the cut. Whereas if you gain a little easier and you can't get them as higher, typically they respond a little bit better. It's just something I've kind of noticed. It's not always the case,
This is the
but
second coach that I hear saying the exact same thing.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
Metabolic
I've seen it.
adaptation goes in both ways, right? Some people are just more responsive, but they tend to be more responsive in either direction. They
Yeah,
can speed up their metabolism really fast, but then the moment they start dieting, the metabolism slows down really fast
right.
too. Yeah.
So, and that's exactly what it is. We all have metabolisms that adapt at a certain rate. So if your metabolism adapts up while you're increasing your calories fast, well, that means if you decrease your calories, it's probably going to adapt pretty fast to that too.
Yes.
And that's why. So that was one thing I noticed early on is like, okay, I got this guy's calories super high. I should be able to make a 20-25% calorie reduction and get things moving when it's time to cut. And it's just like nothing. And then you make another drop, nothing. No, and it's like you just got to get their calories way down again to be able to get things
Yeah.
moving. So the only reason I kind of say that is because a lot of people will really panic if they're gaining a little bit more than they want and the process isn't going really well. Yes, it's a negative during the process, but that usually means a positive for down the road when it's time to cut again. So
Right.
it's not always a terrible thing. But there's also adherence is a big one, right? A lot of times
Right.
people are saying, okay, I've increased your calories by 100, but they're not tracking a lot of extra bites and tastes and not accounting for everything they eat, not measuring their food and things like that. So
Right.
it's just not very accurate. So people who are more accurate, typically the process goes better, not surprisingly. So there's a lot of things to factor in.
That's huge, the tracking. To this day, sometimes I notice that I've been tracking some things wrong. And so now I just use a scale for everything. No more measuring cups, a scale for everything.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I hope you are enjoying this interview so far. To help you on your fitness journey, check out my weight loss and addiction guides, Dopamine Body and Dopamine Brain. They're going to help you lose the weight. And then the Dopamine Brain is going to help you actually adhere to the diet by learning how to manipulate your baseline level of dopamine so that you are not craving and vulnerable to binge or go back to your prior eating habits. Also, if what you're doing has stopped working and you're hitting a plateau, there is a very easy way to counter that. Check out my reverse dieting guide called SUPERBREED Metabolism. That's right, you can really supercharge your metabolism, but it's not in the way that you think. It's not about eating all you want all at once. You have to earn that right, and there's a very specific way that you do that, by which you slowly but surely increase and increase and increase your metabolism to the point where you break out of that plateau and you can go back to losing weight. Also, if you just got out of a dieting phase, do not go back to maintenance calories very quickly. You have to go through a reverse dieting phase. That is the missing secret. And when people don't do that, they regain the weight and you end up yo-yo dieting all your life, losing weight, and then gaining it all back. And so the SUPERBREED Metabolism Guide is the ultimate secret that you may not have heard about just yet. All right, now back to the podcast.
And then
I did a video in the past about that, how I took like a serving of oats or two servings of oats
yeah.
and measured it out like perfectly on the cup and then put it onto a food scale and it was like 25% higher.
Yeah.
It's just there's something about measuring on, a gram is always a gram. A
Yes.
measuring cup, you can pack it in more, it can be a little tilted, there's more food particle space in between, like it's just not as accurate. So, and it's
Yes.
just faster to me. Just throw it on
Right.
the counter and throw it on the scale
You
and
don't have to
done.
choose which measuring cup or whatever you're going to use.
Right.
Just use the scale, keep it there, and it just becomes a habit. It becomes easy. And then if you're using processed foods, that's another thing, because legally, food manufacturers have a 20% your
20%. Yeah.
way, right? Plus or minus. So we know which direction they're going,
Yeah,
right?
it's not going to be minus.
No, right? And so you think there's just 100 calories in this bar or whatever, but it really has 120 calories because they're using that leeway that they have in the 20% margin. They're in within the legal bounds, and it's great for their marketing. But now we're trying to be so specific and reverse dieting
Right.
you out so that you don't blow up with the body fat just because we want to speed up your metabolism, and it's not working because of that. So that's another major thing. If you have a lot of processed foods in your diet, maybe reconsider some like
More
more
whole
whole
foods. Yeah.
foods, you know.
Yeah.
um I love that you said that it's very variable. That's what I see too. I feel like You really can. I don't see why there should be any major limitation as to how much we can speed up the metabolism. You know, I feel like the biggest thing that can limit that is how hard are you training? Are you progressing really fast with this strength training?
Well, honestly, what I would say, I mean, there's definitely a limit. Usually, for the most part, when you're trying to go through a reverse diet to get your metabolism speed back up again,
Yeah.
you can't just endlessly add calories, right? And just
Mm.
forever and ever add calories, and you know, all of a sudden you're eating 8,000 calories and you're maintaining on that.
See,
It's
I'd like
more,
to hold on to that fantasy.
yeah, right. It would be
Maybe
nice,
I could.
but for the most part, it's about getting your metabolism back to what your baseline metabolism should be if your metabolism was not suppressed from your dieting methods.
Right.
Now, you can increase it more based on building more muscle.
Right.
So, bringing your calories up is going to fuel the body better. You're going to perform better. It's going to help fuel anabolism better. So, you can build more muscle. And as you build more muscle, yes, your metabolism gets faster. So, it aids in that sense of things.
Yes.
But in terms of like not having a limit, there's always a limit. It's different. Again, it's different for everybody.
Yeah.
And, you know, I have had, and I can't necessarily explain it, but I've had people who would claim, oh, yeah, you know, I've always maintained on 2,000 calories even before I dieted and stuff, and then we go through reverse, and all of a sudden they're maintaining on like 2,800 calories, right? It's not
Friends.
something you should expect, but I see it. And there
Oh.
again, there's variables. Maybe they weren't very diligent before, now they are being diligent. I mean, who
Yeah.
knows? But
Maybe their
yeah, there,
strength training more, hitting newer PRs, all that stuff,
more
pushing
training. Maybe
beyond.
their activity makes a big difference. Perhaps before, when they were maintaining on 2,000 calories, they were averaging 2,000 steps a day, and now they're having 10,000 steps a day, right?
Yeah.
Like we have to factor in everything. But
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, I just realized because I get sucked into, and I know exactly where we're at, but some people who just are hearing about reverse dieting first, I feel like maybe we should have gone over like the basics, like what are the pillars of reverse dieting? You know, we're gonna add calories. We mentioned that, but there are also the strength training component, right? To send like the right hormonal signal to the body to shuttle the
Hmm.
excess calories we're giving that person into muscle building as opposed to storing as fat, and then enough protein. I normally go with 1.1 grams of protein as a minimum per pound of ideal body weight.
Sure.
Where do you find the best? And also, where how many strength training sessions per week do you find is like the best?
Sure. So it's probably gonna be a little different because you do, it sounds like more carnivore stuff, which that's not really something I do, and I don't have any problem with it. Again, if it's sustainable, you like it, great. I have no problem with any
Yeah.
diet that's sustainable for the individual.
Yeah.
Uh, but I have actually, I shouldn't say that. I have one client who's carnivore. Uh,
Okay. That would be
so
interesting to compare their results compared to somebody, right? Like something to kind of like look over.
yeah,
Yeah.
so I'm kind of at the point, honestly, where I just basically look at protein as pretty much free calories, honestly. Like the research on it is just astounding. And there's more and more coming out all the time where they increase protein, and it's just like you can almost increase as much as you want and there's no body fat gain.
Yeah.
Like there was a study they did. They were trying to see if more protein would build more muscle. So they did 1 gram per pound of protein versus 2 grams per pound of protein to see if that doubling of protein would build more muscle, which
Yeah.
it did not. But that group averaged 800 calories more and they gained no additional body fat, which is just
Whoa.
crazy to me. I know. Uh, Protein is just it has so many processes to go through that it's really hard to store as body fat. I mean, and it's not just thermic effective food. Like there's maybe a 25 to 30% thermic effective food with protein, which is great and really helpful. Fat's like 2 to 3%. It's like nothing. But that wouldn't explain why you could average 800 calories more with no additional body fat at all. And I feel like there's maybe some sort of mechanism we don't know about. There was another study where they had female lifters. They had one group increase their protein to 1 gram per pound, and the other one reduced their protein to a half a gram per pound.
Uh-huh.
And both groups actually lost body fat, but
Mm-hmm.
the group that ate more protein increased their calories by 300, and the group that reduced their protein reduced their calories by 250, and the group with more protein and more calories lost more body fat than the group with less calories and less protein.
I love that.
So protein is just, it's so underrated. And it's like, for me, not having people carnivore who probably pretty easily get protein in, it's
Right.
like pulling teeth to get people to eat enough protein because it's just, a lot of people don't love it, but it's just so beneficial. So we went a little bit on a tangent there, apologies, but I wanted to throw that
No,
out
it's
there.
great.
But
Yeah.
to answer your question, where I typically want people, if it depends on how lean they are. So people who
Yeah.
are leaner, I just want them around 1 gram per pound of body weight. I'm cool with that.
Yeah.
If you're more obese, that's not necessarily going to be very realistic, right?
Right.
Like
If you're 400 pounds,
yeah, if you're 300,
no,
350 pounds, I'm not having you eat 350 pounds of protein. At that
exactly.
point, it's more like, okay, if you had an ideal goal weight, which none of us really like goal weights, so to speak, but just okay, roughly what's your goal weight? Try to eat roughly that amount of protein,
Yes.
close enough. You know what I mean? You can do things like lean body mass. There's a lot of different ways to do it, but for the most part, I just want to eat more protein most of the time.
Yeah, yeah. The better. There was a study that came out not that long ago that showed how they gave people 100 grams of protein per meal,
Yeah,
and
saw that one.
right, and it showed a much higher anabolic response. So like muscle building hormonal signal was sent, and for a longer period of time. And so we used to have like this limit of like, the body can only handle so much protein in one meal, and it seems like no, the more you eat a protein in a meal, just the stronger that hormonal signal is going to be, the anabolic signal is going to be, and for a longer period of time. So that would make total sense, you know?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that was an interesting study because previous findings were not similar, right? And that's why we always look at everything. Um, I basically say, okay, can you eat 100 grams? Like, what would have been the difference between, I don't know, 50 grams or 60 grams, right? We don't know, right? What did it go from 30 to 100, I think? Or do you remember what the
I
lower one
think that it
was?
was like, I think 20 or 25 grams was like the control meal, and they
Yeah,
compared it to 100 grams, and it was like proportionately more, like just the more
yeah.
protein you have, it
So what we
proportionally.
don't know is, okay, maybe it would have maxed out at 40 or 60 or 80. We don't really know. Uh, but either way, go for more if you can because it's not gonna hurt anything and it could
Yeah,
have benefit, right?
yeah.
So I'm here
Yeah.
for
The
any strategy
carnivore
we can.
crowd would love that, because for the carnivores that is, I know I've done it. I've had 100 grams in one meal, because it's like if I'm eating
Oh yeah.
brisket or
Like,
something like
listen,
that, just
if
tons
you're in
of,
a position where you feel like you can't stop yourself, you're like, I need to eat, I'm so starving, I can't even handle it.
go for
Just
the
make it
protein.
protein. Just
Yeah,
make it protein and you'll be fine.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's just that it's hard if it's lean. That's the thing. Like, imagine
Right.
100 grams of chicken breast.
Right.
100
Yeah.
grams of protein in chicken breast. Like,
Yeah. Yep.
that would be very difficult to do. Okay, so we talked about the protein, and now strength training. How much do you generally recommend? Is more better? Like, what has your experience been there?
So depending on the individual, in a lot of circumstances, anywhere from 3 to 5 days per week,
Yeah,
usually. Uh, if somebody can't commit to having 5 days per week, that might be more optimal, but
yeah,
I would rather you do 3 consistently than shoot for 5 and feel like it's
yeah,
hopeless and do nothing, right? Yeah, even 1 or 2 is better than 0. But
right.
yeah, that if you're talking about like what's the most optimal, I would generally say 4 or 5 days per week
Yeah,
and trying to hit each muscle group twice per week and splitting that up. Uh,
yeah,
Very rarely would I do 6 days per week, maybe for very experienced lifters
yeah,
who need a lot of volume to be able to progressively overload, and they're severely adapted to a lot of strength training. Never would I recommend 7 days per week. Your body needs rest and recovery to be able
mm,
to see progress, right? Like you can't make progress if you don't recover. So no, more isn't always better. You have a maximum recoverable volume. Everyone
yeah,
has that, and it can change over time. So you need enough to get over that minimum amount to be
yeah.
able to stimulate a response. But there is a maximum where if you go over that, you're not going to get any more out of your additional training, and it could hamper your recovery and actually
Yeah.
give you worse results. So
My client, the person that I told you about, she's an experienced athlete. We reverse dieted her like really fast because, again, the carnivore plus the experienced weightlifting, it was really supercharged the results. But so anyway, she's my friend now, and she texted me the study that just came out that showed if you're an experienced lifter, like experienced, which I don't know who's watching this right now, how many of you are
yeah,
like in that category. But it was great to see that they saw if they gave him 52 sets per muscle group. That's like
that's a
around
lot.
10 sets a day for 5 days, right? They kept improving with
Wow.
like that's kind of like how much more you have to work to get new PRs and set new records and progress with your weightlifting if you've been training correctly for years. And now like it takes so much more then to really keep progressing.
Yeah, I mean, the more experienced you are, I mean, I can't remember the guy's name, but the guy who first broke the 1,000-pound deadlift as a power lifter, it took him like 3 years and just an unbelievable amount of training and crazy volume to get that extra 5 pounds, right? Because he's just at that like genetic limit, you know. So but that's not going to be the most people probably watching this video, right? That are super experienced, been training for 15, 20 years, like that. That's
we keep putting ourselves in niches, right? It's like it's like how to have like millions of followers as a fitness brand. It's like lose weight easy, you know, no need to track, just like and we keep going in like in the opposite direction. It's like, no, it's hard, you got to do this amount of work and you got to track, and it's like
tough. You know, nobody's clicking on videos that say sustainable weight loss, lose weight slowly and reasonably. Like nobody's clicking on that, right?
Right, exactly.
So I'm trying to find ways to try to make it like, I call it like ethical clickbait, right? Like lure them in a little bit with a little bit of clickbaity stuff, but it still kind of makes sense, the title. And then get them in and then educate them, right? Because you're not educating and helping anybody if you're not reaching them. So
that's exactly what I constantly am thinking about, you know?
It's a fine line. It's you know, a balancing act.
Your powerhouse is you can teach people how to eat thousands more calories, because you've had cases where it's like you can raise their metabolism by thousands of calories. And so that's great. It's that, go with that title, you know, eat 1,000 calories more a day, you know, and then you teach them how. And that's ethical clickbait, I think, right?
That's what I look at it, right? Like one of my videos that did the best recently was, it was about fastest way to go from 30% to 10% body fat or something. And in my title, I had like day 0, day 90 or something like that, right? And it's like, okay,
Beast
like
would be proud.
yeah, exactly. And it's like everyone, and there's all kinds of comments, you can't do that, but even though in the video I talk about how like, okay, the reasonable speed and if you actually want to get from 30 to 10 it's going to require this approach where you take diet breaks and you don't lose too quickly and But you know what? It did well. It reached a lot of people and it helped people. So if it pisses off a few people, so be it. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, because it's the goal is to help people, and how are we going to help the most amount of people if we can't gain that reach? You know, we need the algorithm to be on our side, and it's very tough. You know, because then I think of Paul Revelia, like he's growing really well, and he really says it like it is. And so it's like it's doable, but it just might take way
and he does some of that stuff, right? Like if you look at Paul, and like Jeff Nippert does that all the time, day 1, day 30 and stuff, like recomp and show these extreme results, but then you get them in and they teach and they get like millions of views, right? So
and they have real science,
and it's good information, right? It's it's actually stuff that will help people.
It's not like scamming people or just Okay, so the strength training, great, and definitely don't do 7 days a week unless you're super experienced. Some people, but let's not talk about those very outliers.
More is not always better, usually.
Exactly. And we talked a little bit about, I actually wanted to ask you about growing YouTube and how to gain more subscribers, and I think this is exactly what the
probably I'm probably not the right guy to ask. I've got almost 1,000 videos and I've been doing it for 10 years. So
10 years? You've been doing YouTube for 10 years?
Since 2014, and I've got 17,000 some subscribers. So I'm probably not the guy to ask about how to grow a massive YouTube channel, but there has been a little bit more traction recently.
Jesse James West and Will Tennyson, and those kinds of formats where there's entertainment, it's like edutainment, where they're entertaining people in a way, in like swanky editing and fast-paced and delivering those dopamine hits. Of course, it's a lot more work initially to get the hang of it, but that's how you get to like the millions in terms of fitness content, But it's hard when we are nerds and we love the science and we love the studies. So
well, I just, I always want to put as much information in as possible, right? Like I want to make sure they understand exactly why we do this and all the little things, but it's like, when you do that too much, then people lose attention and then they just click off because they get bored with it. So it's like, okay, what actually has to be in this video and cut everything else out, right?
Exactly.
It's tough to do when you want to help.
We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. And I think, you know, there is obviously also an audience of people who is well versed, who's tried everything, tried all the miracles and hacks and shortcuts, and they're like, fine, I'm finally ready to do the work. And, you know, I can't think of anybody better than your content really to guide them
Well,
through
thank
that
you.
process. Yeah, like I've watched probably most of your YouTube videos,
Well, thank you.
and everyone is from a different angle. And so if people are struggling to understand the whole reverse dieting process, just put like the whole everything on a playlist and just binge watch that, and you'll get a good hold of what you need to do.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, it's true. What else do you feel we may have left out? Something that can help our audience to speed up their metabolism, stop yo-yo dieting, all that. You know,
Sure.
also maybe addiction, talk a little bit about food addiction. That's kind of, I did my dissertation on food addiction, sugar addiction. And
Okay.
and I noticed that, you know, when people leave a lot of addictive foods in, sometimes, especially within a reverse dieting protocol, it might be a little tempting to eat more, you know, things here and there, but then it might really, like, I know my brain, if I have Pop-Tarts in the morning, even if I know I'm reverse dieting
Yeah.
and I have extra calories,
It's gonna be on.
it's gonna be on for the whole
Yeah.
day, you know. And there's a lot of people who struggle with that. That might be their drug. The food is the thing that's very, very difficult to control. So if you can also, like, if you have experience with that with your clients.
Yeah, so I mean, I wouldn't say I'm like I specialize in food addiction or anything, but one of the things I do talk frequently about is trying to not look at foods as either good or bad. And we
Mhm.
all know certain types of foods fuel the body better, right? Like, you know, broccoli and chicken breast or whatever is going to
Don't say
be.
broccoli on this channel.
Oh, really?
They will
Oh,
lose
okay.
it.
Yeah, it's carnivore. Well, you can edit that part out.
I'm
But
joking.
that's what I mean. But this is what I mean. Good versus bad food, it's kind of like when you look at something as bad, and it's probably easier to avoid broccoli than a Pop Tart, right?
Right,
Like
right,
nobody
right,
wants
right,
to
right.
eat broccoli,
Right.
but
Nobody's struggling to not eat broccoli.
no, nobody's got too fat because they ate too much broccoli. But I digress.
Right.
Uh, if you look at a Pop Tart as bad, right, and that you shouldn't have it, it's the devil or whatever, right? So you try to just restrict it as much as possible. I can't have this. I can't have it in my house.
Right.
It's going to destroy me, right? Well, the longer you go without it, and the more you say you can't have it, the more you typically want what you say you can't have, right?
Mm,
So then you eventually get into a position where you're going to have that, whether it's cookies or anything. Like maybe you're at a party and you see cookies there and you haven't had cookies in a month and you're struggling. And okay, well, I had a cookie and now I've already screwed up my diet. What's the point? I might as well
yeah.
get in as much as I humanly possibly can now because my diet has to start again tomorrow, right? And then it just turns
Yes.
into this repeated behavior that happens over and over again. And sometimes the answer isn't necessarily you have to just do complete avoidance. Now, sometimes you do. It sounds like in your situation with the Pop Tarts, it's probably best for you. But
Yeah.
what I found for a lot of people actually helps them. It's called, what is it called? Exposure therapy,
I
where
love that.
essentially you allow yourself to have some of whatever that food is that you typically crave and feel like you can't have in smaller amounts on a daily basis, which at
Right.
first is going to be tough. It's going to require a lot of willpower because you're not used to it. But, and then I could go on about this forever. There's a lot of strategies you can do to help with that. I actually have a video on my channel, but uh, basically what ends up happening is you have a little bit every single day. You get used to having it every day. And now it kind of takes that stigma away. You don't crave it as much because you're having it all the time. You don't crave things that you have every single day, right? You crave things
Right.
that you can't usually have. And it helps teach you that, hey, I can include some of this in moderation. And it's a choice whether I want to have it or not. I can have it, I can not have it.
Yeah.
And it's a choice. And when it's your choice, this isn't the thing for me right now. I don't need any Pop Tarts. You may end up going months without having it, but you always know you can if you want, and it makes it a lot easier to accept that
Right.
and not eat it because you've taught yourself that, right? So
Yeah.
that's kind of one of the strategies I'll use to try to help some people with that.
That can help a
Sometimes it
lot of,
can't be done.
yeah. Here's the thing too, if your metabolism is so damaged because you've dieted so much and never corrected that, that can stimulate intense cravings for food. Like you could become technically a sugar addict or a carbohydrate or whatever food addict because your metabolism is so slow. Your baseline metabolism or your maintenance calories now are like 1,000 calories, and so you're constantly just craving dense calories from any source. So that can also stimulate that,
Oh,
and so
absolutely.
just correcting the metabolism can fix a lot of this out of control behavior around food.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just about metabolism, as in like, okay, your maintenance calories.
Yeah.
There are so many hormonal responses to dieting and especially extreme dieting and even just losing body fat in general, right? Your body doesn't like it. It wants homeostasis. It craves it. It doesn't want you losing weight. It's a
Definitely.
survival tactic. It thinks that there's no food around and it needs to preserve whatever it can whenever you do
Yeah.
eventually eat, right? Um, so when you have this extreme history of dieting, not only is it, okay, I've been ultra restricted, so now I crave it even more anyways,
Yeah.
but you have two different types of hunger hormones. You have ghrelin, which basically signals that your body is hungry, and you have leptin, which signals your body you're full when you do eat,
Yes.
right? So you've got one hormone telling you that you're really hungry. You've got another hormone telling you that you're never full when you do eat. You see how it's really easy to
They're both
overeat, right?
messed
So
up.
your body is doing everything it can to get you to gain weight as much
Yeah.
as possible. So it's going to make you hungry.
Right.
You're going to have a huge appetite. You're going to be tired,
Yes.
unmotivated. It's all very normal
Right.
when you go through those
Thank you for saying
dieting
it's
periods.
normal. You can't
It's
expect to
very
go
much
on a
normal.
diet, right?
Yeah.
You're not going to lose ever a pound of body fat without those metabolic adaptations happening and the hormones changing. And people freak out, it's like, oh, I need to heal. No, it's just you need to correct the metabolic adaptation. It's an art form. You lose a little bit, you correct it. Different people have, different tolerance levels for how long they can do a reverse diet mentally. But yes, it's normal. We should expect it, and it's not the end of the world. It means your body's losing weight. Great. But then you just correct it afterwards. That's all. Or correct it initially and then go on a diet.
Yeah, I mean, you get your calories back up, which will help. I mean,
Yeah.
unfortunately, a lot of times too, in the early part of the reverse, you're actually even more hungry than you are in the actual dieting period, and that can catch a lot of people by surprise.
Hmm.
For a lack of a better way to explain it, it's almost like, okay, you've been on low calories, you start giving the body more, and the body's like, yes, yes, more calories, give me more,
I have
right?
awakened the beast. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And it's almost like food is the gateway, right? You start eating
Right.
more, and it's just like it just wants more and more and more. So you got to
Right.
give it some time. And I like to view the beginning of a reverse diet almost like an extension of your cutting phase, just
Yeah.
because you most likely will be just as if not more hungry, and it's going to take some time for the body to get used to having less body fat, getting used to
Yeah.
higher calories. So you do have to give it time and not just give it what it wants right away, because otherwise you fall into that yo-yo. So it's definitely a
Yeah.
challenge, but it's normal. People always ask, "Well, what's wrong with me? Why am I like this?" And I'm like, no, no, this is normal. This is what most people go through. Uh, it's just if you don't
Exactly.
know any better, it's surprising, you know?
Exactly, exactly. This is why I always err on the side of reverse side more than you cut. Like, because sometimes like you go on a
Oh,
cutting,
for sure.
it's like let's just lose that one extra pound. Stretch the cutting phase for just one more extra pound. Then I'll start reverse dieting. It's like no, always err on starting the reverse dieting sooner, because like you said, like once you start the reverse diet, you're still moving more. You're still trying to figure out what your maintenance calories are. You want to be very, very careful. Otherwise, it's very easy to gain body fat a lot.
Yeah. And you're also, the more you try to lose, the more likely you are to kind of reach that tipping point where all of a sudden you're just mentally over it, your body's physiologically over it, right? So the more you lose, the more you get away from your body fat set point, the more you're going to trigger all these hormonal responses that make it
Even
more
more.
challenging. And a
Mm,
lot of times it's like the juice isn't worth the squeeze at the end of a cut, right? Like
right,
just,
right.
you're losing 3 more pounds isn't going to be noticeable unless you're like freaking 8% body fat or something, right?
Yeah,
And it's just it I think a lot of times people get so caught up in, I've got this goal. I wanted to get here and I'm not there and I have to get there. And if I don't, I failed or whatever it may be. And it's just like,
right.
you
And
got the rest of your
cortisol
life
is
to do this
going up.
stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah. You got the rest of your life. There's no rush. Take your time. And yes, you need to go at least as long as you dieted reverse dieting before going back into a cut. And that is like the bare minimum. And you're taking a big risk that your
yes.
body won't respond and you'll have to start the process over again. And then
Mm,
that is so defeating, right? Like, say you cut for 6 months, you go 6 months of reverse, and you're like, no, I can't take it anymore. I need to diet. The body's not ready yet. It doesn't respond. And you try to push it for a couple months and nothing happens. You've now undone all 6 months of your reverse. And now you have
right.
to start over from square one again. And that is just defeating. You cannot reverse diet too long. It is not possible, but you can reverse diet too short. And the longer you go, I don't care how long it is, the longer you go, the better off you're going to be. The more your body's going to be adapted to higher calories, the more time you're going to have to build muscle. The reverse diet process oftentimes helps with relationship with food and your body and things like that, because you have time to be able to be more flexible and everything. And it just sets you up to succeed. I mean, the very few people that I get who do very long, like literally sometimes a year and a half, 2 years worth of reverse dieting, maintaining. I mean, when they come back to cut, that weight just falls
It's
off,
easy to
because
cut.
they're in
Yeah.
such a good position. Whereas if you're just
So,
constantly in and out all the time, it's a
yeah.
nightmare.
It's so hard though to sell that message,
Oh,
and
for sure.
that's where we kill engagement. And that's why, and I understand it, because even for me, when I reverse diet, I do 2 to 3 hours of strength training to
Yeah.
speed up, and I eat more than 1.1 grams of protein, and it's working. I don't want to I don't have it as a study that's,
Right.
that's published and it's like, here's the proof. But between me and some of my clients, because I started with that hypothesis, like, okay, I understand why people don't want to hear this message, but you know what? I also don't want to hear it. I want to speed up my metabolism really fast. So
Right.
maybe there are things we can do to speed that up. And I feel like, if we can, because some people are willing to do the work. They're like, listen,
Yeah.
I'll do whatever it takes.
Yeah.
Some people are willing
Tell
to
me,
do
eat dirt and I'll do it, right? Like
right,
there are
right.
those
And it's like,
people.
just tell me that I all I need to do is just like do a reverse for a week or two, and that would be the equivalent of reversing for a whole month or so, you know? We don't have long-term data because this is something very recent that I hypothesized about, but I'm so excited. It's worked for me. And it's worked for some of my clients, but like we're a handful. So I don't have a large enough sample size to go
Yeah.
talk more about it just yet. I want to wait.
Well, the two things that stick out to me in your case that is probably big reasons why it's going so well, which is awesome. I love to hear that. One, being carnivore, you get a lot of protein. So
Mm,
as you increase your calories, you're also probably increasing your protein, right? Are you getting more as you increase, right?
definitely.
So we already talked
Way
about
more
how
than 1.1 grams.
exactly.
Yes.
So we already talked about how safe it is to increase calories through protein, right? So you're getting
Yes.
a lot more protein, and that could very well be able to push past what I talked about previously about, hey, you're just trying to get back to your baseline metabolism and there's no like there is an upper limit. Well, maybe there isn't, or not as much if you're doing it through protein. Like we don't have that research, but for all I know, you could add 2,000 calories through a straight protein, which would be freaking miserable for most people. But for all you know, maybe you could do that and be able to continue to eat, because it sure does seem like it's free calories. So I think that's part of the equation. And then you also mentioned 2 to 3 hours worth of strength training, and I'm guessing you're probably training pretty hard.
I start
Um,
counting when it
so
hurts. I did my
yeah,
PhD in exercise physiology, right? But I'm not saying that I'm training this hard because my PhD was in exercise phys, because I think for me it's like the mindset shift that had to happen for me, and in an effort to raise my baseline dopamine levels, I started seeking out discomfort in both my running and in my strength
love it.
training, and that
Yeah,
just naturally led to me being able to build more muscle and speed up my metabolism fast, just because I train for mental health and I train to raise my baseline dopamine
I
because
love
of
that.
my history with addiction. And it wasn't like, oh, I'm gonna speed up. I wasn't thinking of reverse dieting when I started training this way, and now I always train this way. So I think that combination, or start counting when it hurts, and all the protein, I think that those
Yeah.
are
So that's what I was getting at, because one of the biggest things I see, and of course, not everybody's gonna be able to train it to 2 to 3 hours, nor do they need to, but the big thing that it's been very apparent to me for maybe like the last 2 years, I've been really paying more attention to this. And the people who really get good results versus the ones who don't, it's their intensity of their training. And I don't mean intensity like working fast to the gym. I don't mean taking zero rest periods and sprinting between different movements and turning your training into cardio. That's not what I mean by intensity. I mean those last few reps are hard, challenging. That weight is moving down significantly. It hurts like hell. You're making ugly faces, right? Like it's brutally
right.
hard training. And
This
that
should be
makes,
the promo for this for
oh,
this YouTube video.
that
Go watch
screw reverse dieting. I'm
the
telling
pain
you,
and the
it makes such a
suffering.
huge difference. I mean, it's just like, holy cow, like when people really train hard and truly get close to failure,
Right.
this is when a reverse diet could go really well, right? Like, especially if you have a long history of dieting, you haven't really trained seriously. Now you start feeling the body well, you start getting really good training in, and you're actually getting a good training response. that's when people see huge changes in body composition, even when increasing calories, because they're fueling the body so well and the body's just eating it up and loving every second of it. And then, yeah, you might get some recomp if that's your situation.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I think people understand that you're supposed to work close to failure. It's just what people think is close to failure is not even remotely close to actually training to failure. So
Yeah.
you don't actually have to train to failure,
Yeah.
but I mean, you can leave 1 or 2 in the tank. There's been research on this that 1, 2, or even 3 reps in the tank can be just as efficient as actually training to failure.
Right.
But if what you think is 1, 2, or 3 reps in the tank is actually 10 reps in the tank, which it oftentimes is, if not more. I've had people who said they were doing 8 reps at a certain weight, and then I had them go to failure and videotape it, and I want to see them fail. They got like 45 reps, right? So it's
Wow.
like you're not even
Yeah.
you're doing nothing for
There
yourself
you
at that
go.
point, right?
Yeah.
So you have to at least occasionally go to true failure, meaning not, oh, it feels like I can't do anymore. I
Yeah.
mean, you're and you fail, right? Like you actually physically fail in the middle of the rep, then you
Yes.
know. Because even now, I've been training for 16 years now, and even now, I'll occasionally do an AMRAP and go to true failure, and it's like I'll think that I have nothing left, and I'll squeeze out 1 or 2 more, right? Even
Wow.
as an experienced lifter.
Yes.
So if you're not very experienced and you've never really pushed yourself, you have
Yeah.
no idea what it feels like, and it's uncomfortable. It is,
Yes.
but that's
For
where the
me,
magic is.
watching David Goggins
He's
while
badass,
I
yeah.
train helps a lot. But the biggest game changer has been visualization.
Okay.
And I actually created 2 new types of visualizations. And it's not like those types of visualizations haven't ever been around, but the way that like I named them a new name so people understand the difference between the two. Energy visualization versus training visualization. Energy visualization is when you're visualizing the ideal body. It gives you motivation. It gives you more dopamine in your brain, more energy to push through because you're thinking of, wow, I'm going to have this super fast metabolism, ripped, looking amazing, feeling great. That's great. But the thing that helps, especially in the workout to push through, is the training visualization. And the training visualization is you're visualizing yourself going through this uncomfortable rep successfully over and
Oh,
over,
nice.
right?
I like that. Yeah.
It has supercharged my training. Like I can get new PRs both in running and with the strength training a lot better and a lot faster. And
I love
you
that.
you think there's a wall in your head. I can't go faster than that, or I can't lift heavier than that. But then when you do those training visualization, have you ever tinkered around with that?
No, and actually, I'm training right after this. So I can't wait to go try it now. That sounds great.
That's what
And
Arnold
yeah, I mean,
Schwarzenegger talks about, like
yeah,
24/7. He says, have a vision or visualize yourself in the mind muscle connection. If you start really paying attention to what he really means, all he talks about is visualization.
yeah. So the mind muscle connection, absolutely. And I changed that about my training a couple of years ago, and boy, did it make a huge difference when I started slowing down the movement, right? Not trying to lift as much as possible and really focusing on using like really feeling the actual correct muscle you're supposed to be using and creating a little bit more time under tension in the eccentric. And boy, like made a huge difference. But
Right.
yeah, that's really cool. I like that.
Nice. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Colin.
Yeah.
This has been fantastic. Where can people find you so they can work with you and check out your YouTube channel? I will definitely link your YouTube channel. And do you have an Instagram?
Yep, I have YouTube. So I'm active on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook, and they're all well. YouTube and Instagram are both Colin Dewaay, so it's COLINDEWAAY. Uh, Facebook is Colin Dewaay Training, and that's where you're gonna find most of my content. And if you want to send me an email, it's coach@colindewaytraining.com, and happy to answer any questions.
And your website as well.
Yep, colindewaytraining.com.
Perfect. I will make sure they are linked right under this YouTube video so people can click on it and find you very easily. I appreciate everything that you're putting out for us. I learned so much from your YouTube videos. I add a lot of your YouTube videos to a playlist I created for my clients so they
Oh,
can
nice.
understand the ins and outs of reverse dieting. So
Awesome.
yeah, I'm sure that people are going to binge watch everything you put out. The people who are ready to do
the good kind of binge, right?
Right. So I appreciate your time. And thank you, everybody, for watching and sticking with us till the end. If you enjoyed this kind of content, make sure you give this video a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit that little notification bell icon so YouTube alerts you every time I put out a new video. Thank you, Colin. Thank you, everybody,
Yes.
and goodbye.
Thanks so much for having me.